Hi, and welcome to June's Aging Well. I hope everyone is having a good, I can't even say summer yet. We're still officially in spring, but it sure feels like summer to me. But I hope you're having a wonderful experience wherever you are, whatever you're doing. It's always fun to point out that we now have attendees of Aging Well all over the country. And so we are delighted and thrilled and excited that you're here and that you take some time out of your day to join us for an hour. And let's talk about how to age well. Before we go any further, as always, I have to thank the team. Tom Roth with our CTSI, Courtney Hayes with Best Health, and Audrey Belfaro with our Alzheimer's Disease Research Center right here at the Sticht Center. And most of all, every time, thank you. Thank you for being with us. So whether you're in the same area code or you're all the way across the country, we're so grateful that you're here. So thank you. I'm always lucky that I get to really preview the segments that everyone's going to see. And this month it was really funny because when I got the recipe from Jeremy Wally, our chef, my husband is quite the cook, quite the home chef. And he goes, this looks really good. I think we need to make this tonight. And it was that easy that with just, one quick trip to the grocery store to get some fresh mozzarella, this truly is the easiest, simplest, perfect meal for a warm evening. I don't know if I'd be eating outside tonight, but maybe if it was a little cooler, maybe a little later after this would probably be just perfect. So I want to thank Chef Jeremy Wally. He is the owner and executive chef of Lulu Blu. It is an Italian-inspired restaurant in High Point. And, it's fun to start exploring places that are a little further out that may be new to all of us. It certainly was new to me. So without further ado, Chef Jeremy, show us how to make this dish.
Thanks, Deb, for having me. It's such a pleasure to be a part of the Aging Well program. We're here in High Point at Lulu Blu. I'm Jeremy Wally. I'm the chef and owner. Today we're going to make a Salmon Caprese salad. Very simple, just a few ingredients, and cook time, prep time, about 10 minutes. So let's begin. First, you want to make sure you preferably have a non-stick pan, about a medium size. You want 2 quality cuts of salmon. Here at the restaurant, we use 60 South, which is farm raised in Antarctica. The Arctic waters provide cold enough of an environment that you don't have any parasites. They can't survive there, so this is sashimi grade. It also has a higher fat content because of the temperature of the water. So you want to start with salt and pepper on your salmon, just lightly, enough to just crust the top. I have a little fresh oregano and fresh rosemary that's chopped. If you don't have this, it's fine. I think it adds a nice little flavor to the fish. Just lightly add that. So you want to start your pan on about medium-high. And we're going to add roughly 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. Just enough to coat the pan. You don't want to deep fry it, you just want to sear it. And in the meantime, we'll cut our tomato. I have a beefsteak tomato here. You can get Cherokee purple tomatoes, German Johnson tomatoes from your local farmer's market. A quality tomato is a huge part of this, this dish. It's really the star of it. So we're just going to slice that, stack it, and then cut it into large cubes. We're going to take our medium-sized mixing bowl, Add 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, aged preferably. It's sweeter, has a much better flavor. Then we're going to take half a teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Add that. You're going to whisk that in. Try and dissolve your salt. Whisk it lightly. We have a tablespoon of honey. Local honey preferably. You can use really a few different natural sweeteners, agave syrup. You could use just cane sugar if you wanted to substitute that. Local honey has a lot of health benefits for allergies. You can find that at the local farmer's market as well. I'm going to whisk that in. We're going to take the remainder of our extra virgin olive oil, which should be about 1/4 cup. We're just going to kind of pour that in slowly. You're not trying to emulsify it. This is just kind of a broken vinaigrette, if you will. So we got a little smoke coming off of our pan, so we're going to turn that down to about medium. We're going to add our salmon. Let that cook on medium heat about 3 or 4 minutes. Get a good quality. You want a hard sear. You want that fish to be crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Next, you're going to add your tomatoes into your balsamic vinaigrette. I have some little baby heirloom tomatoes here too, which are a nice little addition. Just quarter those. Add some color, little flavor. And I have some smoked buffalo mozzarella. Any fresh mozzarella is fine. I like the flavor of the smoked. It's a little more firm in texture as well. So we're just going to slice that kind of like we did our tomato. And then cube it up. Move that off to the side. And then we're going to take our fresh basil. You want to take your basil, lay your leaves out flat. I have 4 large leaves here. Lay it out flat. Then you're going to roll it up. Then you want to roll it this direction. Lay it long ways. Then cut it in half. And then we're just going to, this is called a chiffonade. It's like julienning herbs, if you will. So you end up with a nice fine leaf. I'm going to throw that in there as well. Salmon is starting to get a nice sear on it. You want a minimum of about that golden brown. That's about what you're looking for. A little bit darker isn't going to hurt anything. The beauty in the medium heat is that it's not searing so fast and that it's going to smoke your house out or burn the fish. So we'll go ahead and flip that. And if you want your fish medium rare, you can just turn the pan off and let it rest. Otherwise, we'll cook it to medium. I've got this oven on 425, about 3 to 4 minutes. Oops. We'll toss this basil and our tomatoes. Let some of that natural juice come out of the tomatoes to add to the flavor of the vinaigrette. Then lastly, you're going to add your mozzarella in there. Let it soak up a little bit of that vinegar, some of the salt. That's what you should see. Your mozzarella should become slightly darker. We're going to take some mixed greens. The best part about this dish is that you can substitute grilled chicken, steak, tuna, even for your mixed greens. You can sub kale, arugula, even romaine, and it won't compromise the flavor or the deliciousness of the dish. So we're just going to put a handful of our mixed greens down. We're going to take our tomatoes and our vinaigrette and just spoon that on there generously. Don't want to be shy. Salmon should be perfect by now. Just gonna pull that out. And we'll garnish that with a little micro amaranth and some micro basil. And that's your dish. Very simple. Great dish for a hot summer afternoon, and one of the more healthy things you can probably eat. If you want to substitute, if you're vegan or lactose intolerant, you could substitute tofu for your buffalo mozzarella. I like fried tofu. It has a delicious consistency that's pretty similar to your buffalo mozzarella. Once again, I'm Jeremy at Lulu Blu in High Point, and it's been a pleasure working with AgingWell, and hope you come and see me, and we appreciate you watching this video. Thank you.
Again, I love it when I can personally attest to how delicious and easy this was. And I don't know if y'all noticed, but there were no edits in that. So that he really did it from beginning to end on camera. So Don even made the comment, my husband made the comment, he goes, Deb, I think you could even make this. So that's high praise, So anyway, we're all looking for ways to age well, and finding meaningful things to do, activities to do, is so critical. Our director of our aging program, Dr. Steve Kerchevsky, talks about the blue zone a lot. And part of that is, of course, healthy exercise, healthy living, but part of that is meaningful contributions, being connected, personally, socially, spiritually, having some focus in your life. And, my husband and I are talking about retiring in a few years, and I don't want to just be a homebody. I don't think I would last very long doing that. And in full disclosure, I'm actually on the board of our Shepherd Center of Greater Winston-Salem. But through that partnership, through that alignment, I have learned all of the phenomenal work that goes on by this organization. And they're a very small staff, and they rely heavily on volunteers. And so I thought it would be fun to hear from Kristen Larson. She is the director of the Vital Living Program, because she has a host of activities that we can all participate in, whether it's to keep us physically active, to challenge our mind, and maybe we want to give back and volunteer to some of the programs supporting older adults throughout our community. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce Kristen Larson.
Thanks, Deb. I'm very happy to be part of the Aging Well series. My name is Kristen Larson, and I am the Vital Living Program Director here at the Sticht Center. As you can hear, there's a lot of traffic going on behind you. We are located off of Ebert Street in Winston-Salem. So like I said, I am the Vital Living Program Director here, and what I do is I do the activities. So I have a lot of fun. Anywhere from Tai Chi, board games, chess, line dancing, and hopefully we can see some of our line dancers this morning. But before we get started, I want to show you our beautiful campus. As you can see, we have beautiful sitting area. We also have a gazebo with a couple picnic tables. We have a raised garden, and we have an under construction walking nature trail. So please, I mean, I have met so many interesting people here. I mean, that people put me to shame. Everybody is just so active and just want to do. So if our singers, we also have our band, which is the Band Nerds. They meet in the afternoon. Not only do we meet in person, but we also meet on Zoom. So we have several discussion groups that go on Zoom. Our Thinking Outside the Box meets on Zoom as well as in person. So we do yoga, Tai Chi. We have that at Pofftown Baptist Church. We have our Tai Chi for Body, Mind, and Spirit that meets at Miller Park on Wednesdays. We have our warm water exercise that meets at Salem Town. Our goal here at the Sticht Center is to keep older adults active and mentally engaged. So we have things from health presentations like heart health, bladder health. We just did a scam prevention seminar, which was really awesome. We have exercises. This morning, as I mentioned, we're about to start our line dancing. This is a fantastic group. They've danced at the BB&T ball field, so it's a fantastic group. We also play chess. We have chess for the beginner, and we have chess for those who just enjoy playing. We also have our bridge groups that meet Tuesday through Friday, and they meet in the morning. And we also have intermediate bridge that meets on Tuesdays. We just ended our beginners bridge session. The next session will be in September. And as you can tell, we're quite small, so we've outgrown our building here, so we do a lot of things out in the community. That is called our Center Without Walls. In Louisville at the new community center, which is absolutely beautiful, we have our Open Doors art class. Right now we have Margaret Miller, who is doing portraits, and we're hoping to have Margaret back with us in July. Also at the Louisville Community Center, we have our arthritis workshop. They meet once a month, and they talk about several different things. They talk about how to play different sports where you don't get injured. They talk about bladder health, and our Writing Stories for Your Life meets there, and they also meet here once a month. Speaking of writing, not only do we have things in person, but we also do stuff on Zoom. We have our writing workshop that meets on Zoom, and is taught by a fantastic instructor named Susan Sermon. This group actually started during COVID and is going strong. I'm so proud of this group. They're actually going to get a book published, and we're hoping to have their signing party here in August, so be on the lookout for that. We also have our warm water exercise. If you're a little fish and you enjoy water, we do warm water about 3 days a week at Salem Town Retirement Community. And not only do we do activities, but we also do other things throughout the community. We have our transportation. Transportation is for older adults throughout Forsyth County at no charge. Transportation will take you to your medical appointments as well as grocery shopping. We also do minor home repair, and that is for anyone in Forsyth County free of charge. It's things like simple things like changing a light bulb, or if you need a ramp. And we do everything in between with a minor home repair. All of that is done by our wonderful volunteers free of charge. And we also have our book sale, which is our #1 fundraiser. Where do these books come from? They come from you. All of our books are donated. All of the books are processed by our wonderful book room volunteers. Our book room volunteers are fantastic. As you may have seen recently in May, we did have our book sale, and we had not been able to have this book sale for 2 years due to COVID, so we were all super excited. We did really well on that. All of the proceeds go right back into funding the activities, the transportation, and the minor home repair. Everything that we do goes right back into that. So if you've seen our book sale and you haven't come and check it out. It's a really fun experience. Okay, and I know you've heard me say volunteer quite a bit. We do have several volunteer opportunities here. As I mentioned, our transportation is ran by volunteers. If you're good with a hammer and nail, our minor home repair is the one for you. If you love books, I encourage you to reach out and join our book volunteers. If you've got any special skills, please give me a call because we'll let you teach anything. Chess or history, writing, discussions. If you're an artist, we'd love for you to connect with us. If you love to teach, we'd love to have you teach one of our Open Doors art classes. If not, we did just finish our art show, which featured our adult coloring, which changed their name to Artistic Expression. The reason they did that is they wanted to show people that it's not just people who come in color. They're very talented. They do multimedia, they paint, they draw, they do all kinds of stuff. So if art is your forte and you don't want to teach, come to our Artistic Expression class. It's a great class. So if you're interested in meeting new people or just chatting on the phone, we have our phone pile program and our visitation. So the phone pile program came to us through COVID. So we were trying to figure out a way to engage people who may not be computer savvy or may not have computers. So the phone pal program was created, and it partners like-minded individuals to have conversations with one another. And what is our visitation program? Exactly what it is. You visit a senior who may not be able to get out of their home, who just need the company. So if that's something you're interested in, you may contact Carol Ann Harris. So if some of these volunteer opportunities sound good to you, you're in luck, because on Tuesday, June 28th at 10:30 here at the Shepherd Center, we do have our volunteer orientation where you can learn about all of our volunteer opportunities, tour the center, and if you're lucky, see some of our activities in person. Whether your interest is physical activity, being mentally challenged, or volunteering, the Shepherd Center is the place for you. I encourage you to come out, meet new people, and enjoy and have fun with us here at the Shepherd Center. So as promised, here are our wonderful line dancers led by the wonderful Brenda Holcomb. They meet Mondays at 10 o'clock. And as you can see, some folks are wearing masks and some are not. Here at the Shepherd Center, masks are encouraged and are optional on what your comfort level is. Join us at the Shepherd Center.
You know, that group really was having as much fun as it looked like. And, you know, what I've learned, again, from my interaction with the team over there is that there is no excuse in the world for any of us to be bored around Winston-Salem, because there are plenty of opportunities to get involved, have fun, and maybe give back. So I would encourage you to take a look at what you're going to get in your follow-up notes, because Kristen has put together a newsletter of everything she talked about and probably more, with exact calendars and schedules and ways to get involved. So again, I would encourage you, if you're sitting around wishing you had something to do, this is a good place to start. So, you know, the title of this series is Aging Well. And what I've learned, I'm so lucky that I have gotten to work with and get to know so many of our specialty physicians called geriatricians. I've learned so much from them that was part of the inspiration for actually starting this series, is to be able to share what we have learned, share their expertise with everyone as far as we can reach. So tonight, I feel really lucky. I think you're going to so enjoy the presentation from Dr. Mia Yang, who is a geriatrician at our Sticht Center. And I love saying our whole name. So it's the Sticht Center for Healthy Aging and Alzheimer's Prevention. And people laugh at me that I say the whole name, but I said, it feels so good to get to say that, because it really is our mission. I get to say that every time I say the name of our group. So I want to look over here, because her talk, and I want to get it perfect, the 5 M's of aging well, how geriatricians address what matters most: mind, mobility, medications, and multi-complexity. So I'm going to get off the screen and let Dr. Yang take it away.
Thank you so much, Deb. I'm going to share my screen and some slides, and you will all get a PDF version of these slides with your follow-up email. So thank you all for spending your time with me this evening, and I'm excited to talk to you about the 5 M's of aging well. And like Deb said, I am a geriatrician, and we will talk actually a little bit more about what a geriatrician does. So this is a brief outline for my talk today. We're going to talk about the who should see a geriatrician, what is the field of geriatrics, and then go in more depth through each of the 5 M's. And then at the very end, I'm also going to tell you about a podcast that I have just launched last week called Ask Dr. Mia, and ways to access that podcast, and we'll end with plenty of time for questions and answers. So what is geriatrics? A lot of people don't necessarily know about geriatricians because there are so few of us, but like pediatrics, but for the opposite age spectrum, geriatric is the care of older adults to help prevent and treat diseases and disability. And I do want to make a caveat that aging is not a disease to be prevented. We're all aging. In fact, I do think that that is the goal of all of you attending this session is, how do we age well? And also, age is really just a number. As a geriatrician, there is such a diverse group of patients that I take care of, and someone who might be 85 might be more high functioning physically and cognitively than someone I see who's only 65. So our physiologic age could be very different from our numerical age. So there is no set age that one should see a geriatrician. But in general, because of Medicare, generally we do see patients who are 65 and older. Some people might ask, how is a geriatrician different from my general primary care doctor? And I would say that I think we focus very much on one's function, not so much on individual diseases. And the reason I'm sure is that once you get more than a couple of chronic diseases, sometimes it's really hard to put all of those different treatments together. What one treatment for one disease may actually counteract, the other disease. So we look at people holistically, and we also help address the family caregivers. So the people who should see a geriatrician are folks who are probably of much considerable impairment in both their cognition and physical function, including psychiatric issues. There is a lot of overlap between the field of geriatrics and the fields of neurology and psychiatry. We can also sometimes step in if there are considerable stress and strain on the family caregivers. We can talk later on perhaps a separate talk about why there are so few geriatricians around the country. But because there are so few of us, it's unfortunately not possible for us to see, all the folks who are 75 up or even 85 and up. But that is one of the reasons why I decided to launch a podcast, to get more of the aging specialty expertise out to people like you. So now we're going to transition to talk about the 5 M's, and this is a great framework, both of understanding what geriatricians do, but also to kind of think about your aging process or your loved one's aging process. And we'll go through the first one first, which is what I think the most important, what matters most. And this is where I think I'm hoping to get some audience participation, perhaps through the chat function for those of you who can find the chat. But what does aging well mean to you? If you can just type a few words or a short sentence into the chat, hopefully I can see what people are putting in. All right, so some responses are coming through. Staying active, being able to live independently, keep moving, having meaningful connections with others, being mobile and engaging with others, doing the things that you enjoy doing, handling the stresses of aging. Yes, that's a very big one. I like to say that getting older is not for sissies. It is really hard to get older, particularly in our society. And having your interests and following through on them, having hobbies, being able to take care of yourself, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, being as healthy and as active as possible. All of those are great. I think one of you may have raised your hand, and we'll be able to, bring you to ask questions at the very end. And then my next question to you all, again, if you can put the answer to this question into the chat, what worries you the most about your future health? And answers are also starting to come in. There's a lot of people being worried about being dependent or being a burden to others. A lot of you are worried about your cognition or your mind. or perhaps developing dementia, or not being able to care for yourself, forgetting things. Sometimes someone also mentioned sort of the unknown, and that is certainly a big worry for a lot of us, is not knowing what may happen. One person mentioned dental health. That is certainly an important one, and it's one that's difficult to sometimes keep up with. And all of those are great. So my last question to you all, which is a very highly engaged group of older adults, is have you communicated what you just have typed into the chat with your family and healthcare teams? And you can either, answer yes, no, maybe into the chat, or just think about perhaps communicating that to your family. And a lot of you have, which is great. Family, yes, maybe not so much, or no family, or maybe not have communicated that with your healthcare teams. And for some of you, you're living by yourself, which can be challenging in and of itself as well. I think it's always helpful to consider, if you're living by yourself, or that, you may not want your spouse to be the one making decisions on your behalf, or, different, depending on which state you are in, there are different laws that kind of list what is a default surrogate decision maker. If for example, in the state of North Carolina, if you're married, then your spouse will be your default decision maker. And then if you don't have a spouse, then the next person will be your adult children. If you have no adult children, then your default will be siblings, parents, and it goes on from there. If those are not the people that you want to make healthcare or other decisions on your behalf in the setting of you not being able to express your wishes, those would be really good idea to kind of document on some sort of paper called a power of attorney that lists someone that you do trust and that you have communicated with about your wishes. Especially for folks who live alone, I think that would be especially important that is one way that you can plan ahead, is to find someone that you would trust to kind of who would trust and understand your wishes well, to be able to potentially make decisions only in the setting that if you're not able to make decisions for yourself. And these things could be temporary, not necessarily saying permanent, but we never really know what tomorrow holds, and it would be helpful to know who might be that person. Okay, and I think those of you who have questions and raise your hand, just hold on to those questions and we'll come back and get to them. So there are, I just wanted to tell you some of my clinical experience. When I talk to a lot of my patients, just as you have answered in the previous slide through the chat, there are sort of three common paths in terms of what matters most to folks. Most people that I talk to value a certain degree of their daily function or their independence, and they really want to align their health decisions and treatments to preserve their function. Some people would say, my goal is to really treasure my life as God has given me, and I want to live for as long as possible, even if the burden of treatment may be significant. I would say that the healthcare world, or the default for your doctors and for the healthcare teams in the hospitals, is to keep someone live for as long as possible, which sometimes doesn't always align with what people actually want, which is maintaining a certain degree of independence. And this is where you can ask your existing doctors, would this treatment help me live better, have less pain, be able to walk a certain distance? Or is this goal really to prevent something that I may get down the line? Or is this treatment or medication something for comfort? There are very few people who would say to me right now that their really only goal is to be comfortable, even if it means that they're not living for as long as they possibly could, because their primary goal is comfort. So those are kind of 3 common paths to keep in mind as you think about both your own healthcare goals as well as other older adults or friends or family that you may be talking to. And we'll come back to this at the very end of this talk as well. So now we're going to transition a little bit to the mind. I know a lot of you are particularly worried about this one based on your responses earlier. And I group both cognitive and mental health concerns into this first M, the mind, or actually the second M, sorry, I should say. So geriatricians are experts oftentimes in memory complaints. So, you know, distinguishing what is a normal aging process with what may be dementia, or this in-between category called mild cognitive impairment. We also may see patients in the hospital where sometimes people have a separate condition called delirium, which can be an acute sort of a new onset of confusion surrounding a time when people are under tremendous amount of stress. So physical stress or emotional stress, like being in the hospital, or behavioral changes. I would say that depression and anxiety are incredibly common among just everyone over the past couple of years, especially with the pandemic, and social isolation as well. I think now that we're getting slowly back to doing things in person and engaging with other folks, this social isolation part may be getting a little bit better, but definitely seeing that it has taken a toll on folks, you know, overall health just from being socially isolated. So thank you all for engaging and participating today. And this kind of relates to what the folks at the Shepherd Center and what Deb has said earlier. You know, retirement often means that people have fewer cognitive and social challenges. The way to be proactive about your health is really to stay engaged, even if you're not necessarily working for an employer or for yourself after retirement. That is really, truly some of the best ways to keep yourself as active as possible. Some things that are what I consider reversible causes of memory loss, but are not often known or not often addressed, are things like depression and anxiety. I see a lot of older adults who are really scared of taking medications, particularly for their mental health, like anxiety. And they may also have family history of dementia or memory problems. And sometimes people can get into a vicious cycle where their mild memory changes, which may only be normal memory changes as we all get older, can then initiate a vicious cycle of becoming worried about their memory, which makes them not as attentive to the information that they need to remember, which makes them more anxious, and then the cycle goes on. So getting your mood treated is oftentimes a great way of distinguishing what is depression and anxiety versus what is a condition that is not going to get better, such as dementia. Hearing loss is particularly common and oftentimes not well addressed. A lot of people, even if they do have hearing loss, don't necessarily like to wear hearing aids, or that they don't understand the association between hearing and memory. We know that hearing loss is oftentimes associated with not only, you know, poor communication with other people, but if you don't hear things, you can't remember them later. And in studies, we know that people who have hearing problems and memory problems, if the hearing problems are not treated, their memory actually declines faster than if you get your hearing treated. Hearing is also related to our balance and is more likely to have falls. Sleep apnea is also incredibly common, and it's another undertreated and underdiagnosed condition where, and it makes sense, if you're not getting enough oxygen overnight to your brain, it's hard to feel alert and awake and attentive the next morning. And then the last one, which I oftentimes see, is folks who are on a lot of medications that could potentially negatively affect their memory. And it's a balance between, we'll talk about, that's one of the M's is medications, and one of the later slides is a fine balance between having the right medicines for you, but not too many meds. There could be also a condition of not enough medications if you're so afraid of taking medicines that that's not great either. I've already talked about this. Staying not only mentally, physically, but also socially active is really some of the best things that you can do to optimize your mind. The recipe that was shared earlier today is a great, what we call a Mediterranean diet, which probably has the best evidence in terms of helping preserve your mind. And it's also good for the heart. I commonly tell my patients who come and see me for memory loss that what's good for your heart is also good for your brain, because the small blood vessels in your heart is related to the small blood vessels in the brain. So exercise, eating well are all good for your overall health. So we're going to transition now to mobility, and this is the big thing as it relates to falls. Falls, the death rate from unintentional falls has actually really increased over the years, while some of the other chronic conditions like heart attacks have decreased over the years. This is the #1 cause of injury and death in older adults in the United States. And in geriatrics, we really approach falls almost from a toe to head systematic way. So we look at things like, were you wearing the right shoes or slippery socks? Are your toenails too long? It's so common that people have toenail problems, and it really hurts when they walk. Is it because they are weak in their legs? It's very common as we get older to have weakness in our thighs or weakness in our ankles in terms of moving up and down, which is why sometimes you see some people shuffle or drag their feet because they don't have enough strength to pick up their feet. Those are very common and fixable things to work with a physical therapist, or if you go to the gym or the YMCA to work with a trainer to specifically strengthen the muscles in your legs. And if you don't have enough strength in your thighs, then it's difficult to stand back up after someone falls. And that could be a reason why people need assistance and have more injuries because they're not able to get back up. Bowel or bladder issues, it's very common for people to fall in the bathroom, especially in the middle of the night when they go to the bathroom. They may trip and the floor is slippery. Those are things to kind of talk with your doctors about, what are some reasons why you might be having a lot of urination, especially overnight, and what are some ways to treat that. Obviously, changes in your blood pressure or heart problems could be causing falls, not just the arrhythmias, but also, when we go from different positions, from lying to standing too quickly, that can cause a condition called orthostatic hypotension, meaning that your blood pressure drops too much when you stand up too quickly, and that could be a reason why people fall. Other things like medications and sensory changes, it's very common for people to have very mild neuropathy or changes in their sensation in their feet. Again, what I mentioned earlier about hearing, people who have hearing problems also oftentimes have balance problems. That could lead to more problems in terms of falls. People who have memory problems, particularly in the later stages of dementia, can have falls as a result of their dementia. And then kind of your external environment, do you have rugs that are easy to trip trip over, particularly in the bathroom? Is it really cluttered and you might be tripping over the books? Those are things that can be addressed, particularly if you're aware of them or thinking about them. So we're going to move on from the M of mobility to the medications. And this is really a general framework for discussing with your own doctor about potentially stopping medicines. Oftentimes, especially if you see multiple different doctors, the default is adding on medicines. And sometimes you may want to talk to your doctor about how to stop certain medicines. I think the first question to ask yourself, along with your physician or primary care provider, is do you know what each medicine is used for? Can you talk about the risk and the benefit of the medicine? You know, is this medicine really doing its job in terms of what you want it to do? You know, is this blood pressure medicine actually reducing your blood pressure? Is this medicine for your bladder actually helping you go to the bathroom less often? Have a mutual discussion about, you know, is it okay to stop this medicine? If you have more than one medicine that you're considering stopping, trying to prioritize which one is most likely to have the most risk and stopping that one first, and then really monitoring after you stop the medicine along with your healthcare team to see, you know, if the problem that you originally started the medicine for comes back, or if you can safely go without the medication. I would say sort of a side note about medicines is that oftentimes people have really different criteria for supplements versus prescription medicines. For supplements, you almost have to have you know, a major side effect to stop, but for prescription medicines, a lot of people are too afraid of side effects to even start them. I would say that most people who are eating a healthy diet probably don't need a number of different supplements, and that is something to discuss also with your healthcare team as to what type of supplements to stop. Some supplements can have interactions with medications as well, and plus they're expensive, so. All right, so the last M is the one that's hardest to understand, which is kind of multi-complexity. And this is really a condition where you have multiple chronic conditions at the same time. Something that treats your kidneys may be worsening your heart and vice versa. A diuretic that may treat your heart may be worsening your kidneys. And how do you put all of that together? I would say that in geriatrics, we rarely have the cure for any disease, but we can do a lot to manage the symptoms and care and maintain with the goal that prioritizes what is important to you, which for most people is to maintain their independence. Geriatricians also have training across a continuum of care settings. I was just with a medical student this morning doing home visits, and she had said that she had never been to a skilled nursing facility or a rehab, even though she's been working in medical school for a long time. And it's surprising how many people don't actually know the type of care or the limitations of certain environments when it comes to these transitions of care, going from the hospital to facility to home and all the players in between. So coming back to this diagram that I shared earlier, multi-complexity really relates to what matters most. It's kind of, this is where the art of medicine also goes with the science, to really talk about, you know, what would allow someone to live their best life, even in the context of multiple chronic conditions, in the context of someone's goals. And one's goals could really change over time. Sometimes we think that we would like to do one thing, we may change our mind when we actually get to that specific scenario. So this shameless self-promotion in terms of a podcast that I just launched. I specifically want to say this is not related to my current employer. I do not speak on behalf of Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist, and that the views are obviously my own, but this is my attempt to really try to share the expertise of geriatricians to the wider public, and that you can find how to listen on both the website, which is my name with an MD at the end, or you can find it on Spotify. This is all new to me. I'm kind of doing it after work and still waiting on Apple Podcasts to register my podcast. So right now it is only available on Spotify. If you listen to music on Spotify, you can also search for a number of different podcasts, and you can search for Ask Dr. Mia. And there's a way to submit questions on the website if you had specific questions. So I'm going to conclude here and say that for patients who want to be seen by a geriatrician in our clinic, I have to preface and unfortunately tell you that there is a particular shortage of geriatricians right now, because we have a couple of clinicians who are either retired or moved to other jobs and out of the region. So there might be quite of a long waiting list. If you're particularly worried about your mind and want to have more information at your disposal, including free memory testing, I also work for the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and this is their number. There are different ways of kind of getting testing on your cognition and be able to follow over time. So that is all that I wanted to share now. I'm going to stop here and open up to questions. Deb, do you want me to answer the ones that came in through the chat?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, anyone who raised their hand, if you could put your question as a chat, that will be the very best way for us to follow up and get everything answered. So trying to go to the very top, or I guess to the very bottom. So one person said, I recently saw a Pharm D in my primary care doctor's office. I'm waiting on the results of her evaluation. A Pharm D seems to be a good direction to pursue.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I'm glad that you're able to see a pharmacist. We have, that they're probably an underutilized resource. And the ones that are particularly embedded in a clinic may be particularly helpful compared to, say, the pharmacist at the pharmacy when, you know, they've got multiple prescriptions to fill and quite busy. So yes, the pharmacist has even deeper knowledge in terms of medications. I like to pretend to be a pharmacist sometimes in terms of knowing the side effects, but a pharmacist can really help you as well as your primary care team really list out the medicines, particularly if you have more than 5, or most people I see have more than 10 medicines. It can be really challenging to try to figure out, you know, is this working? Am I taking it at the right time? Which ones can I take together? Which ones should not? Are there any medicines that can be combined so that I don't have to take multiple times a day? All of those could be really good questions to help simplify and streamline your medicines. And a pharmacist is a great resource, particularly if you have access to one within your clinic. I would say, you know, you can ask a pharmacist at a local pharmacy. I don't know, because there are so many different types of pharmacies and their workload can be quite significant. They may not be able to go in the depth that you want them to go into in terms of your overall mix of medicines. And for the who answered the question earlier, I think that was a unique situation where the pharmacist was actually embedded in the clinic. Yeah.
Here's another one. How should loved ones respond to someone who has dementia and doesn't have a reality?
Yeah, that's really challenging. And dementia is a condition where, the person's insight may be the first thing to go. They may not realize that their memory is declining, or that they're so very fearful of their memory declining that they really want to hide the reality of what's going on with their loved ones. I think it obviously depends on who this person is. If it's a family member, you could try to, go with this person to the doctor, or, call the doctor's office and ask to, provide some additional information about the changes that you have witnessed. Oftentimes, the person's primary care doctor or their regular doctor may not actually know that this person has memory problems, because they usually come to the clinic by themselves. And when you ask them what's going on, they say everything is great. So unless we hear from people who know your loved one, and the 99% of the time that they're not in a doctor's office, it's really hard for most doctors to really tell, what is the situation, especially if the person with memory problem is not forthright. Obviously, if this is someone where you don't have access to their doctor, then to really work with someone who might be even closer to this person in terms of getting medical help. There are also some safety issues when it comes to people who have early stages of dementia. So things like managing their finances, managing their medications, driving, all of these things, we really rely on family and friends who know the person with memory loss to be able to understand the reality of the situation. I think for people who are worried about their memory, one thing that I think could be really smart to do, and I think you guys had a separate talk, or Shepherd Center mentioned something about financial scams. I think it is always helpful if there's someone that you would trust to kind of keep an eye on your finances, whether that's an adult child or someone you trust, because unfortunately, scammers oftentimes target older adults who are very trusting and very nice on the phone, and it's almost impossible to track down these scammers. They change their numbers almost automatically, and if you're and financial safety is one of the most complex things that people have to manage, even as they, retire and get older. That, and depending on the complexity of your medications and your healthcare issues, that's usually another very first sign that someone might be having memory problems, is that their health is declining because they may not be taking their medications properly or forgetting other ways of managing their chronic disease. So that's a long answer to your question, but it kind of depends on the relationship of your loved one who has dementia and may not have the insight to understand what's going on.
What about when it's time to have the hard conversation about taking the car keys away?
Yeah, that is really challenging. And car keys and driving is so important in terms of our independence and in terms of our function. And we never want to take away someone's ability to drive lightly, because that is so important in terms of where you can go and how socially engaged you could be. So I would say that definitely has to happen in concert with, a healthcare team. And I think one thing is that their doctors need to know that there are actual problems in driving. Sometimes we don't actually know that there are problems in terms of driving. There could be a number of reasons why people are having difficulty driving, whether it's because they can't feel their feet from having problems sensing their feet, or diabetes, or is it their vision, or is it really their memory? So I think this is not something that one can really do in terms of taking asking someone to stop driving unless that person willingly goes along and knows that there is some problems. Sometimes people do have some awareness that they're scared of driving or scared of driving in new places. And oftentimes they welcome someone else taking over the driving. But I would say anecdotally, it's much harder for men to stop driving compared to women. And that may be a particularly difficult conversation to have. Sometimes people may also benefit from having an actual driving evaluation. The occupational therapists at Whitaker Rehab, which is affiliated with Novant in town, are the ones, one of the ones who do an on-the-road driving evaluation to try to see if, obviously with the goal of maintaining as much independence as possible, but also from a liability perspective. You know, if you have a diagnosis of dementia and get into an accident, sometimes it could be beneficial to have an official driving test that says, hey, just because I have some memory problems doesn't mean that I cannot drive safely.
And I think we have time for one more question. What benefit would there be for someone with dementia to have an internist as a doctor versus a geriatric doctor?
It's a great question. I think the benefit may also, so I think a geriatrician, like I said earlier, is really great about handling complexity. So if someone not only has dementia, but also has a lot of other issues that makes it difficult to manage because they have dementia, it might be helpful to see us within geriatrics for a memory consultation, and the phone number that I'm also going to send out with my slides. We do have a very long waiting list in terms of memory consultations because the demand is so high. I would say if someone's dementia is well managed, meaning they're in a safe environment, their families are supportive, they don't have a whole lot of other medical conditions that are going on, it's perfectly fine to keep your general internist or primary care doctor. Unfortunately, there aren't enough of us geriatricians, so just from a supply and demand perspective, it's not possible for us to see all the folks with dementia.
And they ask if you could repeat the number for the mind.
Yeah, so for the memory related studies, it's I'll put it into the chat as well. It's 336-716-MIND.
And it's 6463, right? The number?
Correct. Yeah, the mind, it's basically, when you type in those letters, it ends up being 6463.
Well, Dr. Mia, I cannot thank you enough for taking time to share your wisdom, your vision, your ideas. I love your podcast. I promise you, I will be joining it very shortly and encouraging others. And it could be, maybe you've never done a podcast before. So Dr. Mia is going to also include pretty, I don't know, easy to understand, I'm hoping, instructions, because I'm going to need it as well. I have very rarely done a podcast, so I'm looking forward to it. And I want to thank all of you so very much for being a part of June's Aging Well. And I want to date with you. I want to see you back on July 12th. And we are going to have a whole new array of topics, of features, of recipes. So please make plans to join us July 12th. Thanks so much and stay cool.